Hi, I'm Mrs. Bernasconi and welcome to your first AP Biology vodcast. In this lesson, we're going to talk about chapters 1 and 2 in your textbook, the Campbell 9th edition biology book, and really get an introduction for what AP Biology is about. A lot of AP Biology is about creating and connecting various themes throughout the curriculum, and that's really what we're going to be working on today. So there are various unifying themes throughout biology. Okay. And the AP curriculum really focuses on 8 of these unifying themes. We're going to be looking for connections between these throughout the year and in everything we study. The first of those themes is that nature is interdependent, that organisms are open systems, and that they rely upon one another in probably more dynamic ways than we previously thought possible. The decline of honey production due to bees has drastic effects on the biodiversity of flowers that they're pollinating. The interrelationship between development of flower structure and color and scent is directly a result of attracting those pollinators that they need in order to pass on their genes to their offspring through sexual reproduction. We're also talking about energy transfer here. Remember that energy in our system is a one-way flow. So energy flows. We need this constant input from the sun. Because once energy gets used, we can't necessarily recoup it. The ultimate source of all energy is the sun, and all energy eventually ends up as heat. And once energy becomes heat, we can't reclaim it to use it again. We need a new source of energy, and that's why we have to consume food every day. And if you remember from Honors Bio, the energy is always stored in the bonds. Structure and function, you're going to get tired of me saying this because this is one of my favorite themes in the AP Bio curriculum and really all biology curriculum in general. The idea that every structure is designed and has been evolutionarily tinkered with so that it's optimally designed for its function. For example, your small intestine has all of these different villi, these little finger-like projections that are sticking out of it here. And this serves to increase surface area in your small intestine. The small intestine's role is in absorption of nutrients. So by increasing the surface area, then we can drastically increase the absorption of nutrients through diffusion. Okay, again, it's an example of how structure and function fit together. You can also see that here. Look at the rabbit's ears here. The rabbit has these giant ears, and the primary purpose of these ears and the specific thin capillaries that you can see here is for heat exchange. This is a rabbit that lives in a very arid, very hot region, and so in order to maintain homeostasis, maintaining that internal set of body conditions, it needs to be able to regulate its temperature as all mammals do. And one of the ways it's able to do that is through either opening or closing the capillaries, these small blood vessels in their ears, to increase the exposure of their blood to the surrounding environment to either cool them off, or if they're going to constrict those blood vessels, what that will do is will keep them warmer because it's keeping more of the blood further away from the surface where it can exchange with the environment. So an example of homeostasis there and how structure and function really fit together. Also, the hummingbird's beak, designed so that it can fit into these longer flowers. Okay, structure and function is a really predominant theme that you're going to see throughout the course of the year. Also, continuity and change. DNA is this universal genetic code. It unites all life. It's one of the characteristics of life in that all living things have the same genetic code, meaning that the DNA of you and a bacteria and a great blue whale is all composed of adenine, thymine, cytosine, and guanine. Those same 4 nucleotides are ubiquitous throughout life. So life is much more connected and much more similar than it may appear at the surface, but we all have this common underlying genetic code. Regulation, feedback mechanisms. If you need to interact with your environment, you need to be able to incorporate information from your environment and then respond appropriately. Again, if we think back to the rabbit's ears here, it's going to incorporate feedback. With its body temperature rises, that's going to cause its blood vessels to dilate. Dilation of the blood vessels will cool the body. As the body cools, that feedback of the cooling temperature and the brain registering that cooling temperature is then going to release hormones to constrict those blood vessels again to conserve body temperature. And we have two different kinds of feedback mechanisms. We have positive feedback, which reinforces something that's happening, and we have negative feedback, which in fact turns things off. Theodore Dobzhinsky once said, "Nothing in life makes sense except in the light of evolution." And evolution is really biology's core theme. We can explain all that we see when we're talking about biochemistry or paleontology, when we're talking about natural selection or adaptation or the way your body is structured in general. All of these things make sense in the theater and the stage of evolution. Okay, evolution is a process. Remember that it doesn't have a goal in mind, but the evolutionary process is really driving organisms to become better and better suited for their environment. And if you're better suited for your environment, again, your fitness increases, which is your ability to survive and reproduce. We also have this interplay in biology and in all science between science, technology, and society. How do we impact our living world, and how does it impact us? We don't live in a bubble. These things are very tied together, and the more we understand about our living world, the more we understand about ourselves, the better and more informed decisions we can make. And lastly, and this you're going to see throughout the entire curriculum, is that science is a process. We're always naturalists. We're always that 5-year-old child out there looking and asking and wondering, why is this? Trying to explain the world around us. That's the beauty of science, is that we're always seeking these explanations. And the primary way we do that is initially through observation. You can't ask a question or wonder something if you're not out there observing. So keep your eyes wide open as you go through this year and hopefully far into the future. Keep your eyes wide open, ask those questions, bring them to class, be free to explore those. The other aspect of science is that it needs to be tested. Remember that it's not science if we don't have evidence to support it and back it up. So we're constantly looking for that evidence. We're constantly testing, designing hypotheses, designing experiments, and then going out there to test those and refine them and repeat. Okay, any experiment that you do in here, whether it's one that I give you or one you design on your own, one of the key aspects of it is that it has to be reproducible. You have to be able to give them your instructions, and they have to be able to replicate your results. If they can't do so, then there's some flaw in that experiment that needs to be revisited. Well, if we're just looking at this, we can see that we have structure and function here. So this is the anther part of the flower here, and in the center we have the stigma. The anther is the male portion of the flower, and the stigma is the female portion. Yes, plants do reproduce sexually. And if we look at structure and function, why is the plant arranged this way? Is it just random? Well, the answer is no. It's arranged this way so that there's an optimal chance of this pollen coming into contact with the stigma. Okay, so that the sperm that is in the pollen can fertilize the ovules in the stigma and then produce seeds. Okay, if we have structure and function here. We also have this ability of the plant to attract pollinators, and pollinators are really key to spreading the biodiversity and spreading genetic variability, right? If you're constantly reproducing with yourself, you have a great output because 100% of your offspring have your genes, and they have 100% of your genes. But we know that creating clones isn't necessarily the most evolutionary optimal choice to follow, because in doing that, we really limit our diversity and we become susceptible to disease, predation, and various other environmental factors. So if we can reproduce sexually with other plants, then we're going to increase that variability and give us a little bit of a buffer. So pollinators are really key here. So the scent of the plant, the color, and even the shape of many plants. If you think about orchids, a lot of them are designed to deceive their pollinators. This is all designed for pollination. It's not for our intrinsic benefit. It's not because the plant wants to be beautiful and inspire poets and musicians and all that alike, and artists. It's that the purpose is pollination. The purpose is sexual reproduction. So again, here's a great example of structure and function. Okay. Also, in that pollinators, so pollinators and flowers are kind of in this evolutionary dance together, where they are evolving to match each other and exploit each other's senses. And this aspect is would be considered that interdependence in nature, perhaps, or even that theme of evolution. So you can see here how when we look at different aspects in biology, we're not going to look for just one of those themes. We're going to try and see how all of these 8 themes are really playing into a single system.